Good morning. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening. Good now. Good wherever and whenever you are. My name is Ryan Erickson. I am here with the inimitable Niels Flagging, as we are often Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, occasionally. At this point, in a rather um, uh, unpredictable rhythm, as this world tends to be unpredictable. Can we plan it? No, we cannot. No, we must sense and respond and do all that kind of wonderful, beautiful stuff that we as human beings love to do and improvise in the world. So, with that, um, welcoming everyone here today to this space and addressing or inviting the topic of that down below on the bottom of the screen, there is no status quo. And I tell you what, this has been something that has been breaking my brain for a long time, since almost ever since I came into the work of the BetaCodex, read 42 and Niels and your stuff. Um, this idea, like, my God, if there's no status quo, what does that? How what is now? What is what was, and how can you have change without the idea of a status quo? So that was the energy that came with me and kind of going into this theme today. So as kind of setting the stage, I would now like to go over to you to kind of welcome you here. So kind of just kind of went crazy there for a moment. So hello, Niels. How are you and where are you and when are you?
Hello, Ryan. Good to meet you again today. I just arrived back from Brazil, and yes, I came a little bit late to our studio here today. Yes, glad that you started without me, in a way. I mean, when we started this series of videos, I think we wanted to do it every Monday on the same time, and of course that would never work out, right? So, and you briefly mentioned this. We moved to this moving schedule thing. We attempt to do a session per week, and the time and hours can move. And we think this is more reality, more adaptive and more reality robust and so on. Yeah. So today we will talk about the status quo myth, which is not the myth of the band, or the band is not the myth. The band is good. Rocking all over the world. Isn't that the band?
I had never heard of the band before, so I have to come. I had not.
I've seen them live. They are legendary. They are really great.
Oh,
Oh my
okay.
God. Are they British? Which is why you've never heard of them? I'm not sure. Are they British?
I think so. I'm not sure.
As Germans, sometimes we do not know. Is Nicole Kidman British or American or what? And she's Australian, of course. But Status Quo, the band, I think it must be British if you have never heard of them. They have been around forever, since 1961, I think you figured that out, or 1962. And they had the "You're in the Army Now." You don't know that song either?
I'm
I
drawn.
always thought they were Americans because of that song. It sounds American.
It's that kind of thing has a little bit a ring of the YMCA kind of Village People thing, but I'm not going to go there.
No. They are a straightforward rock band. I think they still exist in some form or shape, and they have done, I mean, robust rock and roll, I would say, for ages, and some very decent pop songs. I think in the Army Now, it was when I was a DJ at times of my school. DJ, I was part-time DJ. I always played in the Army Now. That's a brilliant song. Missile over my head, and it's a beautiful song, beautiful anti-war hymn, beautiful.
Well, in the background, I am going to bring up a little status quo. Maybe we'll share it for a few seconds and not get demonetized, not even monetized, not get copyright claimed by YouTube. So we'll see. Exactly. We'll see about that goes. In the interim, while I find some status quo, maybe some music to bring at the end.
Yes. we want to talk about change, of course, and the status quo in change. Yes, not
Yeah, and
yes.
again, I want to go specifically. I mean, making a statement like that is on theme, rather provocative to say, "Oh my God, what do you mean by that? You're crazy." No, of
Yes.
course there's a status quo.
Yes.
Well,
Everybody let's first talk about this. Everybody takes it for granted that a status quo exists. Everybody means 99%, 99.5% of people in change assume that the status quo must exist, and must be challenged.
yeah.
That goes back to the lazy defreeze, change, refreeze, unfreeze, change, refreeze model. That Kurt Lewin is not responsible for. It's just a myth based upon Kurt Levin's work.
So then we do need to bring Kurt Lewin into it at some point eventually, because there's
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, I mean, because the idea that of the status quo is the the status quo is how and what the organization is today, and that must be fought, crushed, battled against, overcome. We shall overcome. Sounds like a song as well, right? So it must be,
Now I'm the DJ.
It must be the status quo is the enemy. It's what's wrong. It's the status quo. Oh my God. And so we really take it for granted. Of course, I took it for granted as well. When I first, I'm not even sure when the idea came to me that a status quo could not exist, of course. But if you look at philosophy, it has a lot of philosophy in it to claim that there is a status quo, a way things are. It's the way things are around here. Culture is also, all this culture myth that we discussed in another episode is also related to that, right? It's culture. The culture tells you what to do. It's a status quo. It's fixed. Yeah. Totally.
Okay. Well,
of course.
The fact that maybe it is the fact that it's fixed, right? Because I mean, this when reading the article, that kind of popped me into that. I mean, we're talking about a living system, right? So,
yes.
Anything that is fixed in a living system is dead. Right. I mean, so that's kind of the idea.
Yes. If there were a status quo, the organization would be dead. That's a great first thing, right?
So, all right. So the idea of something that is okay, status quo equals dead, and we as change practitioners are talking about intervening in an organization made up of organisms, a living system. That's what we're talking about, something that is constantly changing.
In which people with their communication participate. A social system in which living beings, borrowing in a way their communication to the organization, make the organization exist through their communication. Yeah, and then we assume that the status quo is the starting point of the change. You have a North Star, a vision, a mission, a goal, a target, something like that, right? You have it here, and then there's a status quo, and you compare the things, and there is a gap. All these languages, of course, very entrenched. We have to review the dominant language to course understand the myth again, right? So the status quo is the starting point, that there is some kind of aim or goal or vision or North Star thingy, and there's a gap, and we do a gap analysis, and that's usually the change, right? And then you think that you get somewhere. Of course, all these,
and then you plan, and then you plan the change and implement the change, right?
And then you can plan and implement the change. So that's change management as we know it, and it must be true, right? Because we learned it. It must be. All about that is wrong. Every single philosophical concept idea, and it's full of concept ideas, right? For example, you reach a better state by overcoming the status quo and by implementing a plan. That's highly philosophical, right? It's highly it's Newtonian philosophy, like a machine. There's a machine.
The mechanistic view, right? As opposed to mechanistic, materialistic.
Then, of course, some stuff is added to that. A little group of people analyzing the status quo and understanding it can overcome it. So then you get to further change management concepts, right? Like managers can do it, little teams or groups or core groups or so can do it by themselves and so on. It just
Yeah.
needs to be implemented. People will follow a plan. Then there you will have resistance to change, which we talked about already, I think,
Yeah.
as well, which doesn't exist, but you will have it in this concept. You will have it. So yeah, all kinds of unholy consequences of the status quo. It's really a key cornerstone of traditional change management, and total bollocks,
It,
as the English would say.
well, and that is soon. And this again, one of the ahas that came when I read through the article the first time. Again, read through it again recently. The article that's up there that we say do. This one, the no status quo article, linked in the YouTube comments
Yes,
and in the
yes,
um,
yes.
the idea of constructivism, that each individual person constructs their own realities
All the time.
based all the time based on what is observed and felt, and
Yes,
that
yes.
is true for each individual, which means that if those small group of folks at the top of an organization decide what is real and decide what ought to be real in the future, then of course it's right, and it takes no account into the the lived realities, the perceived realities, the actual experience of those who are under them, right? So that we're talking about that traditional mode. Well, okay, so right, so thinking of that, well, everyone has, in a sense, their own current state, right? What is my living state? And I don't know, how do you I guess this is terminology, right? Because now you and I understand, and that we have this agreement that, oh, there is no status quo. The status quo means that it's dead versus living. The challenge that comes at thinking about this is that, well, that language is common, and so how do you, particularly in your practice, um, articulate that current state? I mean, what is the language that you use to
Current
kind
state
of
is as bad if you say.
okay,
Subjective
perfect,
reality.
perfect.
That's much better. Current state, there is status quo, current state, that's the same. It's interesting, right? That it's hard to. Beautiful question, by the way, right? How do we just pick another language? But it's important, not first of all, but it's also important, I think, to understand that the language here expresses beliefs, philosophies,
Yeah,
attitudes towards change. So it's not just a linguistic problem, as some people would say,
yeah,
or semantic, which is even worse. It's not a semantic thing at all. We're not doing science of language here. We're doing practicalities of language and expression and thinking.
yeah.
So it's not semantics, it's it's use of linguistics that we're discussing here.
Mm.
But it's not just that. If you assume that there is a fixed reality which doesn't exist, for example, your kids are not in, or your parents or your family, nothing and nobody is in a fixed reality. Nothing that's alive. It's all in flux. That's the first thing
Mm.
about reality. And the second is that, according to constructivism, and this is very real, we construct our realities all the time, continuously. And so everybody who's involved in a change thingy in an organization constructs her or his own reality all the time, live, all the time. All the stakeholders do the same. So to speak of a status quo is a ridiculous oversimplification already. It only leads to doom and death in a way, because it assumes that, because then you just mentioned it, some managers might fool themselves into thinking that their perception of reality is true and it's like that. Which is
And that because I see the world this way, you must see the world that way, and that others must see the world that way.
I think most change agents, another horrible term we might discuss in another episode, probably have the best intentions, of course. They do not acknowledge fully, they do not acknowledge enough how different perceptions and realities are. And how I mean, if you assume that reality is constructed over time, then you perceive the dynamics of change very differently as well. You don't have to overcome anything. If you assume that the organization is in flux anyway, then you will ask, okay, what kind of intervention?
Yeah.
Any intervention will produce some change. Any flip, as we often call it, will produce some change. If we like it or not is another question. So we don't have to overcome nothing. We have to continuously work on the change. We can produce the change all the time. There are all kinds of consequences from this
Well,
technology.
this
Right?
is, and this I think comes in a couple of the other papers that that deal with this subject, is the whole now to new, right? So that now is living, and there was the intervention that brings this team, this set of actions, this process, to what's new, because that's the whole idea. There is change. Something changes from what is happening now to
Yes.
what the level of performance that this team or this organization seeks to achieve, right? So
Yes.
I guess the idea of that status quo kind of is like a looking back, more than a that, oh,
Yes.
this is what was, and this is what we want to be, but it kind of maybe has less of a presence to it.
Yes. It's
How
very
does it?
static, very oversimplifying to begin with. It assumes, it gives you the idea that there are, mechanistic mechanics at play and not emergent dynamics. So it assumes all kinds of things and it's one of these. But I think you asked a beautiful question at the beginning. What kind of opposite vocabulary do you have? Well, stuff like emergence, momentum, intervention, socializing,
Direction.
building. Hmm?
Direction.
Direction. I try to avoid that term. Interesting that you bring
Well,
it up.
not as a verb, but as a noun. That there's a, if we are doing something now, current process, whatever, then the new is somewhere else, or something else, or some other. I wouldn't say a state now. Again, I'm figuring some other set of actions.
Yes.
So that in the system.
Yes. Look, but I would think not so much of direction. Interesting, very interesting. I think this is the kind of research we want to do in the network as well, right? I would bring up other words like intent, for example,
Yeah.
or shared intent, or whatever, right? So intent is much more interesting than direction, because can you really say that BetaCodex is a direction, a set of principles? I mean, the BetaCodex compared to the Alpha Codex, does that give you direction, or does it give you intent and principled thinking, or whatever, or reflection, discourse? All these things are very important, I think, in the change vocabulary of the beta organization, of beta transformation, of a modern contemporary attitude for change. Interesting, but direction, we can put that on the to think about more list.
Yeah. Well, I guess think of
We don't have to agree, of course.
Well, yeah. Well, the idea of motion, the idea of
Motion, beautiful. Paul
motion, momentum, and that kind of thing. And that's what we're thinking in direction. I'm trying to unwind from the language to make sure that me and that we can articulate to those who are unfamiliar with this idea, who may be seeing this in whatever future they are in.
Yes.
Yes,
we are inviting, with this conversation, we are inviting everybody to understand the realities of change differently, and to subscribe to a more contemporary view of change in organizations. Right? There's so much light here. The sun is shining so beautifully.
It is at 6:19 in the morning here on this. It's
midday
dark
here.
So,
midday here. Beautiful winter day. Yeah. So yes, by the way, this would be a vocabulary of change. That would be a beautiful little research subject as well for BetaCodex network white paper. Contemporary vocabulary change.
Well, this is, you have the list of distinctions. Yeah. Also, which is great. I mean, maybe that again, we're each episode we think of 3 other episodes to kind of put into there. Yeah. So, what is the distinction between status quo and the present?
Yes, and it's very, very understood. But of course, let's go into the basics again, maybe a little bit. The status quo vocabulary, or the term status quo suggests there is a crystallized reality, right? And it is not. It's crystallized only in the way that people think about organization in alpha mode, command and control mode. That is crystallized in a way, but the reality of the organization is really, really in flux. Yeah, and that's not a dream or an esoteric thought. The reality is in flux, wobbling all the time, and the perceptions also. So we have two two spheres of wobbling, and
even
the
even in alpha.
construction of reality. So there's three wobbling spheres, so to speak.
Okay, I missed the third wobble because I wanted to come back and say that the fact that if we take that wording off the table, that the fixed change, then what is, to describe the current, the activities, the tune that's playing in alpha, right? The alpha tune, right? Whatever. So but that's still wobbling, even if it's an out. But the style of the managerial style, the team interactions, the market interactions, they're all in alpha mode. I mean, that
Sure,
then
you deal with the realities in a certain alpha mode, in command and control style, authoritarian style.
before, and this is before intervention. This is just,
No, this suffers interventions all the time as well, I think.
Oh, okay.
Changes all the time. You create an HR department, you create a quality department. All this changes the reality of command and control.
Yeah.
However, it remains in the mode of command and control, in the dominant mode of command and control, most organizations. And even the way we approach change in command and control organizations is based on command and control thinking. You assume command and control thinks about change. So that's the beauty of alpha organizations perpetuating themselves. I mean, they have an enormous stability, which should not be underestimated, right? Command and control thinking produces beautiful stability. It's also and terrifying and destructive and humanity defying, but it is beautifully stable. It has a logic in itself, which can be controlled. Things are fixed somehow, so we can control them, steer them, coordinate, dominate.
It's the illusion of stability. Maybe
beautiful that's illusion of stability. It's beautiful. Which recommend it to anybody who's suffering from too much reality. Detach yourself from reality. Start a command and control organization.
Well, this is very, and maybe this, I think this is on point, because the term, this VUCA term, came into use. This volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity,
and coined by the U.S. military.
Again. Yes, exactly, by the U.S. military, and that if you think of that as each of them as polarities, right? So VUCA is this description or whatever it is, that this, okay, reality is all these things: volatile, uncertain, complex, blah. And the polarity is volatile to stable. That there's an idea that we want to take this volatile environment and help it become more stable, possibly, or that the past was stable, now it's volatile.
We have to reduce complexity. When I hear that, it gives me the creeps. It shows so much ignorance, right? It pops out everywhere again.
We need to reduce the weather. I have to reduce
the livingness of life. Kill it. It's a Terminator philosophy of looking at the world. Reducing complexity.
Right.
So complexity is aliveness. Living systems are complex, produce complexity, and of course respond to complexity. And this status quo idea is of course complexity ignoring as well, right? It ignores that things are alive and in flux, and that we perceive them, that there is no reality, no one reality, but that there are multiple realities. So each person we meet, like the two of us, we do not have the same reality. We do not see reality. I mean, that's why we always say we don't have to agree, right?
Yeah.
Because we have so many. We live in two different worlds. Two people live in two different worlds naturally.
We have different contexts, different environments. All and this total bullshit about shared values, right?
Yes.
So and this is the McKinsey thing, and I think that came too. That the idea that we can articulate this set of values, and now we, i.e., you all out there are going to assume my values, and all that kind of stuff is crazy, because I may not value the same things that you do, and I almost certainly do not.
Yes.
That,
Yes.
but and that,
Still we
and
do
this,
this together, right? And still we
yeah,
believe BetaCodex is a good idea. But those are not values; those are principles. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. So,
But the whole value sharing, value sharing, value whatever management, it comes from, again, from a philosophy of domination, control,
yeah,
and it's Orwellian, really. The idea to
your
agree.
values are wrong.
Yeah, yeah. It comes from this idea that we must subdue people to a set of beliefs or values. Yeah? So many dystopian. It's like this. The Circle. There was this Tom Hanks movie, The Circle,
Yeah.
about the diabolical Silicon Valley tech companies. Very much
Oh
like that, right?
yeah.
We have family. We share the same. No, we don't. Even in families, people do not share the same values. Not at all. They just agree that family is a great thing and that we need to have some solidarity. Yeah, but that's not a value. That's just decency, right? Values.
It's
It's not even values. It's a principle of decency.
well,
So
and
yeah,
I was going to say, and well, this was brain being around. So assuming that each individual has their own individual set of values, their own individual realities, their own individual experiences.
constructivism again as a
This,
recommendation to read more about it. Constructivism, very compatible with beta. Yeah. Yes.
and I'm not even, and I want to think like, where did that? Because again, not being a philosophy major in college or doing that now, I'm coming across all of these concepts now in my my middle age, my vintage, right? So
Never too
it's at
late
one,
to learn.
never too late, right? Um, so the thing that again, after we set the stage for constructivism,
Yeah.
that each person has an individual reality, then there comes a point, well, how, and if our reality, there are certain themes in that reality, again, the sponsorship who decides to hire us to come in and improve performance, decentralize, make a more democratic organization, all this kind of stuff. For a reason they're doing that. The sponsor is doing that for a reason. There's an idea to articulate it and do this kind of leadership storytelling to say this is the story now in this moment that all of us who are here in this room are writing together. This
Yes.
is whole group process. This is creating a sense of common knowledge, creating a whole new set of agreements, protocols, all this kind of stuff that happens in open space agility, open space beta, that intervention mechanism that, again, that you discovered and Dan kind of put together, is that the not the only way, a great pattern of coming to this sense of I know that you know that I know that you know, this common knowledge, is with open space technology and these large group processes. And that open space isn't the only one, but
Mhm. Yes.
that I think, how does an organization engage with complexity, engage with the individuals who are there, uh, acknowledging constructivism? So, and that's where open space beta comes in, and all the flips.
And
So
open space, you're totally right. And open space, I mean, we're both in love with the open space meeting approach, open space technology, and I think it's a great way to show. And this is what the mystical part in open space, I think, is that regardless of what you do during an open space, you come out differently and kind of frustrated and enthused and all of these things, and changed, transformed. It's very
yeah,
powerful. And why is it so powerful? Because it beautifully makes every participant aware that there are subjective realities which are different for everyone. The whole format visualizes this subjectivity, right?
yeah,
The choice of topics, the choice of where you are, the choice of you are being made aware of how you can contribute, where you can contribute, and that you're free to contribute or not, which is a contribution as well. So you cannot get out of this game of of meeting other people's realities. I think that's very open space is maybe the most effective, let's say, meeting format. In that way that it makes you incredibly aware of the different realities and how they're constructed at the same time. So we become aware of the realities and their construction process.
Yeah.
It's very powerful, right? It's like a systemic meeting in a way that beautifully depicts as well that there is. If you have ever been at an open space, I think it's more difficult to believe in the status quo, because you notice that everything there is in flux. You yourself and the others, and how you communicate, collaborate, agree, disagree, socialize. All this. It's a beautiful example of the no status quo existing. And I think whenever we work with managers, of course, they are always shocked at this realities, right?
Yeah.
Because of course, managers in their meeting bubbles, they are not used to understanding that everybody else also constructs, even without meetings. You construct realities of the organization all the time,
And they're
intense.
in many cases, again, this is not to fault the individual human beings, that who have come up into a system of, I am the manager. I am going to conduct this meeting in this way. This is my agenda. This is the agenda that I'm going to communicate this to you, and thus you shall behave in this way. And then going into an open space where, okay, you see that wall over there? There is nothing on it right now. So here's the story. Now it's time for you to write it, and write it based on what you care about and what you want to have happen, and what you're frustrated. And where is that? And what are you in? You're going into the center of the circle saying, I think the supply chain process between location A and location B is crap, and that something needs to be done about it. If you want to talk about that, go over here at this time. And repeat that process over and over. And then the folks and you're sitting in a circle. There's no one person on the top of the stage.
Not in our approach to open space, by the way, Ryan. Not sure if you know this already, but we do not work with a circle in open space. We open open space weeks before. With the invitation, we open the open space, and the themes, the session topics, can be suggested way before the actually physically happening open space.
Well, I think that this
we have the circle. We have a session start, like a plenary, very simple, and there are no session pitches, but the whole session thing is done before the open space and at the wall, let's say the agenda wall in a way.
And the wall, so there's a sense of that the individuals are authorized to put their topics on the wall, or wherever that wall is virtual, as it goes, and the wall emerges, right? So
yes,
you have a huge opening circle. But again, I'm using it's the circle metaphorically, and the reason I say that, and I stick with that, is because it's the equalization of authority.
Yeah, but everybody's equal anyway. So the circle is not needed to make everybody equal. In my mind, we don't have to agree, right? We don't have to agree. We call it open. We call this approach that I'm talking about. We call it open space dev, organizational development style. We think it doesn't. You don't have to. Of course, everybody got the invitation. Everybody knows they're equal. The same laws or principles apply to everybody. So everybody's equal anyway. And the circle.
But as an animal farm, some people are more equal than others.
And we're all different. I mean, we are equal.
No, that's a horrible part of it. We're all equal, but some of us are more equal than others, right, from animals.
Yeah. No, I know Animal Farm, of course.
Okay. So you see, it was like, what are you talking about? No, okay, all right.
Yeah. The pigs are more different than others, right? More equal than others. No. In open space meetings, I mean, in what we call open space dev, we abolished the circle because it's a huge. In our mind, it's a huge waste of time, right? We want to dedicate the physical open space, the meeting, let's speak, let's say, we want to make it as effective as possible. So we always thought, okay, why do the big circle thing? Why not? And of course, the circle has the disadvantage that people cannot previously anticipate what topics will happen. They cannot previously subscribe to the topics. For I'm not saying that the circle method isn't good for certain audiences, types of attempts, but for organizational development purposes,
Mhm.
the objectives are very clear usually. So why not anticipate the session generating already? Why not initiate it earlier, to put it precisely? So it's initiated way earlier with the invitation in principle, so that teams topics can be collected, voted, commented already. So that's already totally equal. Everybody's totally equal in that, of course. And then at
Mm.
the open space, when people arrive at the open space day, people already see the wall, the grid, session grid, as we call it. I think that's a proper name, even, right? They
Yeah.
see the session grid already partially filled, right,
Mhm.
with the topics that were discussed. And then what starts is that people have to agree with others if they want to switch a time slot, or
That's the marketplace, yeah.
it's like a marketplace, yes, but it happens pretty much in front of the session grid of the
Mm.
wall. Yeah, it's usually one wall, right, where the
Mhm.
session grid is. And so the dynamics of changing the topic systems. So people, for example, discover, oh, this session and this is pretty much the same. Can we unite? So I will talk to that person. Can we unite this? Where do we put it? And so on. People can
Mhm.
generate new sessions. All that happens at the wall. They can vote still at the wall and so on.
Well,
And of course, that's very democratic too. Right? You do not need a circle to be democratic.
well, and I think this is really interesting because a lot of times when I talk to people about open space technology, and this whole idea of sitting in a circle, going to the center of the circle, making your pitch or whatever it is that you care
Yeah,
about,
yeah,
that there are infinite number, or 8 billion different sets of realities and perceptions, that there are some people who get freaked out by going to the center of the circle and
sure. It's
saying
horrible.
something
I think it's horrible.
that they would prefer to do the deep thinking about what they want
Yeah,
to have happen, and
yeah.
write that up and do that.
I think the
And
circle is totally embarrassing for 80% of people. The circle thing.
well,
The
there
session, even pitching. I mean, you're as an American, you may not notice, but pitching in itself is a terrible thing. It shouldn't be done. We shouldn't pitch things to each other. Let's not pitch. Not in this show. So
well,
pitch my idea to other people. It's an embarrassing thought to me. I never enjoyed this. And I'm a total extrovert, as many of you know.
yeah.
So I should be inclined to do this kind of shit, right? But I'm not.
Well, maybe, man, this again, obviously another topic of that, what that means, but that there's an idea of that some if I have the whole people with ideas, right? That's how stuff happens. So it is incumbent upon the person with the idea to get it out there and put it in play so that it can be riffed on and jammed on and
Yes.
whatever,
Yes.
and create it. And that if my intent is to have this idea become reality, or become a shared reality that I have with the people who want to, what I mean, we could certainly go talking about constructivism, but if I want to play this tune in this place, and I want to play it with these people, I got to go out there and say something about what I want to have happen, what I desire, what is my intent, and
Yes.
do you want to come with me and do that? So I don't know if you want to call that a pitch. I don't know if you want to call it a proposal, or
Invitation. You invite people to do
well,
things with you. Yeah,
perfect,
yeah,
an
yeah, yeah,
invitation.
yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
invitation that I make is that, again, it will show my passion. It will show. Yeah, you can see me kind of trying to figure this out here in my
Brilliant.
head.
That's what we want to have, Ryan. This is a beautiful moment. I just had this thing when invitation declines into pitching, everything's rotten. Yeah, that's the kind of thought that
Mm,
I had. Beautiful, beautiful thought that you just elaborated on.
because
Beautiful.
it's like it's this whole push versus pull thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I
yeah.
am I
And
am I
of course, it is hard during an open space dev that I'm describing, to
mhm,
keep the momentum so that people feel comfortable with inviting each other all the time, which is the
mm,
major fuck up, I think, if you do not have a circle, the classic open space circle. People,
mm,
you must bring the idea about that. Well, you can pitch a session, invite somebody else all the time. create a new session all the time. We usually do this like this on the session wall, session grid. We put
Mhm.
the sessions that were voted upon or developed upon them in the first track, session tracks, so to speak. Yeah.
Mhm.
So the sessions take 90 minutes. We put the highest voted sessions in the first track, so that for the latest tracks there are more open sessions
Mm.
or
They
open.
they they will emerge from that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So so people perceive the temporal dynamic of the day more intensely as well. So like, okay, the first slot sessions that were voted upon, discussed upon, beautiful. Everybody knows where to go, so you get it running, and then of course more ideas emerge, and then people can put their sessions there in the later tracks. And of course, the latest session track, whatever that is, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, you should have
Mhm.
more and more open session slots so that people can and feel invited and in a way are forced to create more session ideas. And so it's an intense thing that happens there, much more intense than session pitching, I think. Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, there are beautiful ways of updating, upgrading, and improving upon open space, I think.
And I think that's a very interesting theme, because that's something that, as a board member of the Open Space Institute of the U.S., I am also interested in how the practice of opening space for conversations to invite change into the world. That there's not one best way, Fred Taylor. No, there is not one best way.
Yes.
Um,
Especially, of course, in the age of the internet, we might ask, why not open the space before the open space?
yeah,
Why
and
not use voting? And there are beautiful, beautiful apps or softwares online. The first we tried 15 years ago, I think, was Idea Scale. Still
mm,
around. I think it worked very
mm,
well. But we have often done this physically, the kind of the session proposals with our clients. When the
mm,
client has a main side, a main production side, or a main headquarters or something, where people we put the session proposal grids or walls in this on site, and they can make the suggestions on paper and vote on the paper with dots or whatever voting system.
mm.
So that gets everybody thinking already. Okay, what are topics that are emerging here? Why is the whatever pay topic, money topic coming up? Do I want to discuss this? People come up with very formed ideas.
Yeah,
This again shows that status quos do not exist about anything, right?
yeah.
Come with more and more formed ideas to the actual open space event. Yeah, and they have this opportunity
So
to reflect.
this getting back to the status quo idea.
Yes,
There's okay. So there's the point where an executive has never heard of the Beta Codex, has never heard of you or me or any or what the is this,
yes,
and then they think about it. Oh, all right, I want this to happen, because this seems very interesting to me as a value proposition that I really really want.
yeah,
Okay, so then the process of the story the reach out to you, the story. Here's the story I want to tell. What does a beta transformation look like, right? With open space, and we talk about the components, right? We're talking about open space beta now, and that oh, what is the cell structure design? What are we talking about? How do we measure performance in decentralized systems with relative targets? And what we have talked about, not maybe here, but there is this qualification period. I like to call it the tilling of the soil, right? So we're creating this environment that is providing the information through the qualifications that will grow the knowledge
yes,
that will be, and what I'm trying to put the things together here that we're talking about. That if the space is opened, how is the space opened by the sponsor, and what are the activities that happen prior to the first open space? And
yeah.
I think that's an interesting thing. I think that's a nut that will help others say, oh, here's how this stuff happens. It feels like, oh my God, the status quo is so fixed that
Entrenched. Yeah,
entrenched, right?
yeah.
So again, you could make up whoever you want to as some character and find not so all names will be changed to protect the innocent. Um, but how does that? What is that first discussion like when an alpha executive um, has that here's mine now, right? What do you say to that?
To a client, an executive,
Yeah, to a
and then
client.
the
Yeah, so a
CEO of
client
an
executive. That
Ooh.
was that was a very long question. I apologize.
No, I like that. I like that. And it was a very good question. And I think you would have to say more specifically what the person in question would say. But one of the things that relates to today's topic is as well when the question's gone up, when do we start? I always reply the same to my clients. I always say, you're already starting. You're not done yet, but
Yeah.
and there is no done in a way. There's perpetual beta, but no, we do not need to kick off anything. There is no status quo. There's no kickoff. There are no milestones. You already started. Now the question is, do you continue? The only question that you have to ask yourself as an executive or a company owner or whatever you are, I like to highlight that really. It's, do you want to continue? Do you have the willpower to continue?
Mm.
Because you can only break off or continue. Those are your two options. Yeah. You always have these two options. You can always walk away and say, Niels, it's just it's so. Some
It's too
clients sometimes
hard.
they don't find me. One client last year, he told me, like in a workshop, during the coffee break in a workshop, that he said something like, in that conversation with that guy who made this silly comment, my manager, my employee here, who made this silly comment, by reacting so fiercely, you lost a few sympathy points. I'm not sure how to express this in good American, but in German, he said, like, you lost a few grades of sympathy, and
Oh,
everybody's
that I get it. I think our viewers will
get
get
it, right.
that wherever they are. Yeah.
And
You turn some people off.
I was polite enough not to reply what I should have replied, which is, I am not I'm not the candidate here looking for the bachelor. You are, because I have to work with you as a consultant if you want to continue. Of course, they broke off, right? Because that kind of thinking, that it's about the consultant must be sympathetic, must be understanding, and eating the bullshit. You are a good consultant if you eat the bullshit. No, nobody should eat any bullshit. The reality of a beta organization is you must become more open to dissent, more capable of having dissent, and capable of exploring tough things and being a little bit harder. That doesn't mean that everybody has to communicate the way I do, of course. I do not believe in that kind of superiority. But if you cannot handle somebody like me in a workshop, you will have difficulties, let's say, accepting democracy, organizational democracy in a beta organization, right?
Yeah.
So I like to. I replied to the client on that day. Look, I think you have to get used to these modes of expression. If you are not used to people handling conflict in the way that I showed you how one can handle it, then how do you expect the organization to be decentralized and democratic and powerful and adaptive and agile, right? That's what I told my client. But the other thing is, if you want to dance, don't criticize your dancing partner, right? If you want to dance, you have to find the flow with the other person,
Yeah.
regardless of how good or bad a dancer she or he is. I once danced with a person, a woman. I once danced with a woman in Brazil. She was a trained dancer, sportive. She did a championship in
Yeah.
some kind of old-fashioned dance.
Ballroom kind of thing.
Yes, and she danced samba for the first time on that
Mm.
day with me, and I'm not so good, But when she asked me, okay, would you try samba with me? I've never danced it, but I think I can do it, she said. And I said, yeah, okay, why not? But don't expect too much from me. And people actually looked and afterwards applauded us for dancing. And of course, the applause was not for me. It was for us as a couple and for her specifically, because
Yeah.
she was such an amazing dancer. And
Mm.
just by going along, this is the lesson that I learned that day, right? By going along with emerging patterns and with the differences in style and quality and so on of interactions, by tolerating more difference and distinction and more diversity, of course you become much more your options become much more powerful. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
change much more if you accept that. So I think that was a powerful lesson for me. People applauded me for dancing samba. I'm not very good,
Mm.
and this woman had never danced it, but still we were excellent. And it has nothing to do with individual capability. It was a very interesting lesson for me.
I was actually just gonna say, do you think that her level of mastery with dance had something to do with
Oh,
it?
totally. Yes, yes, totally, totally, totally. It looked like a show, and I was aware of it while we did it. I was aware. Okay, this looks like it's incredible, and
Yeah.
of course the beauty of a great dancer, woman especially, is in samba they do much more anyway. In most dances, I think
Yeah.
women do more. On
Yeah.
some dances, women do much more than the man, and samba is that kind of thing where you, as a man, you only have to go along, really.
You make her look good. All right.
Yes,
That's kind
you
of
have to you can keep the basic patterns, react somehow sensibly to what the partner is doing, and then you are fine, right? And yes, of course, overall mastery beats everything, right?
Mm. Ooh. Ah.
Transferable mastery is you cannot beat it. It's the best, right?
Yeah.
But
Mm.
where did we get there? How did we get here?
Ah. I think we're a couple things. There was the client conversation, and I think when you
I
started
guess.
talking, my recent reading deeper into Peter Block's work, what what it is to be when you are consulting, when you're a consultant, there's you that it's important to state what you want, and to be unafraid to be in that conversation, to that transparency in that contracting phase, that very first bit, that this is me, this is my role, this is your role, you're making that agreement. I think that's part of the agreement crafting thing. But the way you talked about it is that I'm not gonna eat your bullshit. Well, that sounds like a pretty bold statement to give to a client, but that's stating who we are. I mean, and that also, you also mentioned dissent, which is huge, and I think that's the is one of the 6 conversations, right?
Yes.
So, and that's of Peter Block. For those of you who aren't familiar with him, this I think it came from the book, the Community book. The 6
Which
conversations
is
came from it.
wonderful. Yes.
Um,
Community by Peter Block. Beautiful book. Very, very.
yes. So there are, if so I was just that idea. That's how we got there, talking about the client conversation, and
Yes,
and
yes.
inviting dissent, and I'm trying to think how that necessarily. Oh, the relationship to the status quo is that there's a person who gets the bright idea after seeing a video like this, or talking with you, or talking with me, or talking with Silka, or Valeria, or Ugo, whoever it is who is in, or Peter, who's in this place among the many. They get the idea, and that at that moment, that's kind of a flip. That's that first
Yes.
flip, I
Yes.
think.
Our colleague
And
Hans Weichselbaum from Austria, he describes the present moment. He says every encounter between humans is a nowness
mm,
from which multiple futures part or emerge, right? Or they are the multiple futures are really consequences of the nowness of every human encounter. So in
yeah.
every nowness, in every moment of encounter, we construct possibilities for futures, for futures,
Mm,
right?
I
Which is a beautiful
totally get
way
it.
of imaging the consequence of constructivism. If you look at it, that of every
Mm,
encounter changes the world, constructs something new, opens up new possibilities for new futures that wouldn't have existed without this moment, without this nowness. So in a way, this shows beautifully why every conversation is a holy moment, in a way, or an important, crucial moment in
oh
time.
man,
Because without it, you cannot. And I do not mean it in a faith-based or religious sense, but
no, but
it's
it's
where
sacred.
uh, the production of the futures happens. Yes? So it's I think a very helpful way of understanding that stuff like status quo, kickoff milestones, North Star future.
Mm,
That's really nonsense. It's really bogus, right? You don't need a North Star. You just have to construct reality in every moment, in every nowness. If you use the nownesses, don't worry about North Stars. You do not need direction,
mm.
right? But if you communicate in the here and now with intent, of course there will be direction. Surely there will be direction, not necessarily the one you you expect, or you will not move into the same direction afterwards. The parties that encounter. Yeah, Ernst Weichselbaum also says this: the smallest unity is three: two people and their communication and their connection, their linkage. The
Mm.
smallest unity is three, not one person,
Wow.
but always three.
The, this again, this is probably a potential topic number 4 from today. I think this idea of unity versus uniformity,
Yes.
right? And I think that
Yes, it's
uh,
very intimately connected. Beautiful. Yes, thank you. From
yeah,
yes,
it just and what was the prophet, of management, Mary Parker Hall, what was she talking about, when talking about unity? So the at the risk of going for another 2 hours, or thereabouts.
everything discussed, nothing solved. That's our motto.
This is the invitation, right?
That's the
Um,
invitation. Yeah, we hope we made you think a little bit. But of course,
so
we have a little deviation into open space. We hope you forgive you, dear viewers, listeners, forgive us that we deviated a little too.
But that's not a deviation. I mean, what emerged from that is that it's part of the very fast organizational transformation, right? It is this yeah. So as at
That's
the risk of going back into it,
we should recommend. Let's sum up the recommendations we want to make. There is our paper from now to new right here,
yeah.
which is about change as flipping. Then there is the white paper, very fast organizational transformation. All these illustrate approaches to change without notions of status quo and fixation.
Yes.
And we talked about the book Community by Peter Block briefly. Open Space Beta, of course, was a topic we discussed. So openspacebeta.com is a source where you can find everything. What else?
Flawless Consulting. Also in the description notes, I linked the original "There Is No Status Quo" article, the LinkedIn
Yes.
article, which from Essays with Beta. I believe that's also in the Essays with Beta book.
No, it's not. I wrote this status quo article very recently. It will be in the next Essays of Beta.
Volume 2. Volume 2.
Yes, which will be Essays of Beta Volume 2, exactly. Yeah,
All right.
great. This was lovely to talk to you. What final words do you have, Ryan?
Hmm.
Did you learn anything today that you would like to?
As I might go, I haven't yet gone back to a lot of these, but I think I may go back because I want to do a clip about that whole nowness. That every conversation, creates a new set of possible futures, and I think that's a beautiful statement. That hit me really hard. Um, and I think the language around that, getting out of the idea of the dead, that this world that we are in, and that the relationship between us, this unity that we are experiencing now, um, is alive and deserves to be treated with that kind of respect, and that this is not a fixed place. This is just when you and I come to agreement about where we each intend to go, and we have that. And that's beautiful. And you want to, and you scale that, and you scale that. Oh God, I'm bringing another awful topic into it, but you grow that sense of life, of living unity, and status quo is dead. It's a dead parrot. Be in the nowness. So that's where I landed. Where did
Very.
you land?
Thank you. Oh, I'm just amazed by what you just said. Beautifully expressed. I can only applaud to it. Thank you. Great.
Right.
We have. I might say we are for one of the following sessions we will have we will have guests in future editions of BetaCodex Live. I should say that we will probably have another session, just the two of us, but when at a certain point we will have guests, Americans we are talking to right now, with a long history in organizational development. So we hope to have some guests in BetaCodex Live in a few weeks.
Well, on February 6th at 8 a.m. Eastern, I have not met him yet. Bill Pasmore will be our guest to talk about something. Well, we haven't yet agreed. He has a new article coming out that we're going to have a nice talk about.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to talking to Bill Pasmore again. I would say he's a friend. I met him many times, and one of the most fascinating, brilliant, beautiful, I would say, thinkers of organizational development. So we're looking forward to that conversation with him, of course. Great. That's it for today.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn up the music here and.
Please don't stop. Status quo.
Party. You can hear this, can't you?
I can.
Okay. All right. So I will say goodbye.
Listen to the band Status Quo. You're in the army now, for example.
I've got them on my iTunes. So here you go. I'm gonna put the graphic up. We could still talk about this stuff in the back. So hey, you who are seeing this on LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever, we're going away now. Goodbye. We'll see you next Tuesday.
See you very soon.